So here we are at the Dragon's Den Herb Shop in Makawao Upcountry, Maui, with the owner, Dr. Malik Cotter, Doctor of Oriental Medicine, and you have an upcoming course with the title of Men's Sexual Health and Intimacy. What will be covered under that title?
Well, when we look at men's sexual health and intimacy, it's a topic that is talked about and it's not really brought into understanding by a lot of today's modern men. Mm-hmm. My training has been in the Oriental Chinese, pretty much, medical field. Started back in the late 70s. Educated throughout China. Studied with some incredible teachers, especially through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And when we look at this, I'm going to be coming from the Western point of view of understanding how the prostate, the testicles, the penis, ejaculation, erectile dysfunction. I'm going to be covering these topics, male infertility, things along those lines, but I'm also going to be covering the internal alchemical aspects of what's going on. Mm-hmm. What does it produce? It's just not about the Western thing of getting off, having your ejaculation, and hopefully the orgasm is attached to the ejaculation. In the Taoist point of view, I'm going to be talking about Nagel. Ne meaning internal, Gong means to cultivate energy. How we can use sexual energy for health, vitality, how we can use it for insight, for intuition, how we can use it for harmonizing relationships, spiritual insight, developing a higher volume or a higher clarity of our own energy, taking it from these lower centers. We have different centers in the Orient, in chakras, or in the Chinese are called tian, houses, where this energy has certain qualities. And if we're going to be stuck down in the lower centers, then we're going to be we have more density in our own way of expressing life and love. And what the idea is to use that fire. We use something called the Jing, which is the lower part of the body. We have the three treasures, the Jing, the Qi, and the Shen. The Jing is essence, the Qi is energy, and the Shen is spirit. How to transform the Jing essence into Qi, and then have the Qi and the Jing go and transform into Shen to open up the higher centers. Mm-hmm. So I'll be covering the physical, the aspects of the physical, and I'm also going to be covering the alchemical, which to me it has greater value. Mm-hmm. It has greater value because that's the energy that really produces life force, connects us to the universe. In the Orient, we have to understand that the sexual intimacy is 2,500 years old. Mm-hmm. It was it's in something called the Huangdi Neijing, which is the internal classic of medicine, where the yellow emperor, his name was Huangdi, had his three consorts, his three teachers who were women to teach him the sexual arts. Mm-hmm. It's been passed down, and now my job when I was with my last professor in Chengdu, at the Chengdu University, Medical University, he said to me, my job is to update, mm-hmm. not to lose the essence, but to update the packaging. And that's what I've been doing. And that's why in the last 40 years of practice, I'm taking the ancient techniques and theory and bringing it into modern practice. We can have theories about sexual intimacy, but we can have these principles of what they do. But a principle without a practice is useless. And then we also have a lot of people in today's modern Western world having the practice of sexual intimacy, but there's no principle, understanding of what they're doing. So a principle without a practice is useless. A practice without a principle is dangerous. And this is why there's a lot of sexual things going on. We've never had so much STDs, sexual transmitted diseases. We never had so much men who cannot control their ejaculation, or erectile dysfunction, or prostatitis, or benign prostatic hyperplasia. we've never had these many things. These things didn't exist once upon a time because men knew how. And the whole purpose, when you strip away all the costuming of the understanding of this is the physical, anatomical, and this is the energetic and how things are moving, it all comes down to the loving connection with yourself and with your partner. It all comes down to that pure, loving connection.
That's beautiful.
And
That's quite a different perspective than what we've been taught conventionally.
Yeah.
Is that training, was that part of your medical schooling, or was that something that you had teachers outside that you sought out on your own, or how did that come about?
Well, in the 1970s, I studied with Dr. Stephen Chang of San Francisco and now of Reno, Nevada. And Dr. Chang was one of my first and one of my best teachers.
Mm-hmm.
He introduced me to the sexual energy, or the Tao of sexology, is what he called it. He also introduced me to a lot of other things like herbology and foods and different things. I had a wonderful, good tutorship with him for 3 years. Off and on, he would come to Maui here, and I would be his valet. I was just a young laddie back then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I entered Beijing Medical School in the 1980s, early 80s. And I met a lot of new things. China just opened up, and I met a lot of different people. And it was still pretty, in the antiquity of China was still there.
Mm-hmm.
The government did not crack down on Qigong yet. The Falun Gong movement of the late 80s brought the crackdown to the government on Qigong practice. Back in the early 80s, when I was in school living in Beijing, it was still people doing Qigong, and you could find these teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 3 years there working and studying and learning as much as I could. And then I said to myself, it's too rigid here. It's too tight here.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go out to the western part of China, because I've traveled through Chengdu. And then in 1989, I started studying in Chengdu Medical University. Mm-hmm. And that's where I met more teachers, incredible Qigong teachers, incredible acupuncturists and herbalists and people who understood the whole aspect. But I met my primary teacher, Li Zhongyu, in Chengdu. He was an elder. He was an elder gentleman. And he taught me the 8 different parts of the Bagua, the 8 different trigrams. If you look at the Bagua, mm-hmm. the trigrams, there's 8 trigrams around the yin-yang symbol. Each one of those trigrams represents a medical field. Mm-hmm. And one of that is sexology, okay. Part of that. One of those trigrams is the understanding of sexual intimacy mm-hmm. as a way to cultivate, develop, and heal, mm-hmm. to create vitality. And we talked a lot about it. Solo cultivation, dual cultivation, mm-hmm. how to connect with your partner, how you can create the alchemical lifting and chi raising of one's own self by oneself without mm-hmm. having a partner.
But that is also what's so beautiful, I feel like, about the way that your understanding of medicine, that you have such a great understanding of both Western science-based medicine and also these traditional forms of medicine. And I know that that is really what makes your classes so unique and why people come to your classes. How will this also be, will there be some practical exercises, or what is sort of the layout of the classes?
Well, as I said before, I just can't give theory and principles. Mm-hmm. And I just can't give practices, and this is how you do what you do. When I teach down at the university and I teach my courses down there, I give the principles and the practice. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's really what makes it. You need to have them fit together. Yeah. Western science, to me, is beginning to marry Eastern mysticism. And I want to be part of that wedding party. And I see it happening. I see quantum physics, neuroscience, epigenetics. These are now saying the same thing as Taoism, mm-hmm. as the Vedanta, as the Vedas, as Ayurvedic medicine. The same thing I'm hearing in when I was working in Tibet and when I was living and working in India and China. Mm-hmm. I see all that. They're all on the same train. And now I'm beginning to see how it's filtered into the West. Mm-hmm. the way I look at it is that the roots of the flowers of life and health are, the roots are in the east, but now the blossoms are beginning to blossom in the west, the vine effect. Because there's a lot of us Westerners who have gone over there in the last 40 years, and we're coming back with knowledge. It's an interesting thing. So being here in Hawaii, I like to say I'm in the middle of both. And my job is to integrate both. So I study Western sciences. I study medical, Western medicine. I interface with a lot of Western medical doctors. I do a lot of work along those lines. And then at the same time, my doctorate is in Oriental medicine, Chinese medicine, and that's what I practice. And I have the opportunity to understand I can talk in both worlds.